Hi everyone, I'm Raj Kumar, President and Editor-in-Chief of DevX. This week we'll be breaking down the big headlines in global development and bringing in some top experts to help us do it. If you want to follow along with the stories we're talking about, check out devx.com and subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Newswire. There's a link in the description. Follow us along on Twitter and you can see many of the stories we're talking about today, and we'd love to hear what you think. This is This Week in Global Development.
As always, I've got a couple of guests with me. I'm joined by my colleague, Alyssa Mulene. Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, Raj. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Actually, good afternoon from where I am, sitting in our Barcelona office today. And Alyssa, of course, is a global development reporter for DevX based in DC. But we've got a special guest with us this week. I want to welcome J.M. Bauer, Jean-Martin.
Hey, Raj. How are you?
I'm great. Great to hear your voice. Thank you so much for being with us. Jean-Martin is the country director for the World Food Program in Haiti. And of course, there's so many topics this week that we'd love to get your take on, but we got to start with the fact of where you are and what's going on in Haiti. You know, we've got a number of stories that we'll dig into around nutrition and food and the kind of work that you do every day. But of course, the situation right now in Haiti is of particular note, and a lot of people in our development and humanitarian community are very much paying attention to what's happening there. So we'd love to just get a sense from you, Jean-Martin, of what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, Raj, you're right. The situation here is quite complex. And this week, the big news in Haiti was a new estimate of the displaced population that came out from the International Organization for Migration. We now have, and hang on to your seats, 578,000 displaced people in this country. It's a gigantic number. This is an island with a nation of almost 12 million people. And we now have more than 500,000 people who've been displaced by the violence in Port-au-Prince, mostly going from Port-au-Prince to the south. And I think that new number really underlines how serious things have gotten. When I came here 2 years ago, there were about 20,000 displaced people. That was following the earthquake that took place in August 2021. And now it's just grown so much that we're facing a tremendous displacement crisis, and all humanitarian agencies have to focus on responding to this displacement crisis. I've been to these camps where people live. Reality is extremely hard. I mean, you mentioned malnutrition, Raj. We're very worried about malnutrition amongst children in these displaced communities, and a response couldn't be more urgent.
Yeah, and how much of this displacement is into planned camps versus just irregular displacement, people moving to nearby towns or cities? You know, give us a sense of what it's like. The scale is massive. So
it's been massive. And at the start, most of the displaced people, and this was last year, they would set themselves up with friends or relatives. But right now in Port-au-Prince, the majority, more than 60% of the displaced population, is moving to places like schools or churchyards or construction sites, without much infrastructure at all, without water, sanitation, without security, and that's just been extremely complex. And what we've seen recently is also people leave Port-au-Prince. According to the IOM, in the month of March, more than 100,000 people left the capital to go to other parts of Haiti, and quite often these cities in the south, and a lot of the movement's been to the south of Haiti. These cities don't have the infrastructure to host such an influx of people. Now, people who've moved to the south, again, often move to a friend's house or a relative's house, but we're also seeing sites pop up in the south, these informal settlements without any infrastructure.
Yeah, and just talk for us a second, if you would, and Alyssa, feel free to jump in if you've got a question for Jean-Martin, but I would love to know, what is it like for World Food Program in terms of your ability to move around the country and reach the people who are in need, just given the security situation?
Well, look, Raj, it's very, very complicated for the team here. I'm quite proud that with our partners, we've been able to do quite a lot, but it's been complex. Since the start of this crisis, we've been able to deliver more than 1 million hot meals to the internally displaced people in Port-au-Prince on more than 80 sites. The way we do it is by working with local partners who know the lay of the land, who are very security conscious, who know the people in the neighborhoods where we do the distributions, and who are able to manage the different risks that they face. We've been trying to do as much as we can with local foods as well. So localizing our effort has been quite a success for us. So we've been able to, what we do is set up central kitchens in Port-au-Prince. We have, at the peak of the effort, we had 4 central kitchens operational. And in these central kitchens, we prepare thousands of meals. At the peak of the effort, we were doing 30,000 meals every single day for the displaced population. They're packed into cardboard boxes, put into thermal boxes, put onto minibuses, driven down to these displaced sites, which are in dangerous areas. The central kitchens are in relatively safer areas. And then that's where the distribution takes place. So we have to navigate a shifting security situation. We have to navigate risk. And then the problem is between Port-au-Prince and other parts of Haiti, it's very difficult to move around. You need to know that the airport in Port-au-Prince was completely shut off to all commercial traffic from early March until the end of May. It opened quite recently. The port of Port-au-Prince, the main container port, was not operational for the same period. The roads in and out of Port-au-Prince are controlled by armed groups. So to get from Port-au-Prince to the south, where the displaced population is moved to, we have to get on a helicopter or an airplane, and then get from wherever the helicopter can take you to the site. So it's quite a workout in terms of logistics. Also, moving supplies from Port-au-Prince to the rest of the country involves using a roll-on, roll-off ferry. We roll the trucks onto a ferry in Port-au-Prince. That ferry sails around the areas that are controlled by the armed groups, and then the trucks roll off the ferry. This is a service we also provide to other humanitarian agencies that bring a medicine or supplies for basic services in all of these areas. So it's gotten extremely complicated because Haiti's effectively been split into 3. You've got the north, where you can drive around and have some access. Port-au-Prince, very complicated, but split from the north and the south. And then the south itself as another separate canton, if you will. So it's been just extremely complex for us to do anything. But I have to say that with the way we've organized ourselves, the way we've set ourselves up, we have been able to bring essential assistance to the population.
Gosh, there's so many different moving pieces and so many different complicated things that I'm sure your team is kind of dealing with. I would just be curious in terms of how your staff is feeling, how, especially you mentioned localization efforts and local staff on the ground, I'm sure. I mean, what is kind of the mood with your team and with the folks that are actually in Haiti dealing with these challenges?
Well, I have to say that this crisis is quite different from previous ones. A lot of the colleagues I've met who have experience in Haiti came here after the 2010 earthquake. After the 2010 earthquake, there was a lot of optimism that Haiti would be built back better. That was the mantra in 2010. This time around, we're facing another crisis, and the crisis we're looking at now is the worst since the 2010 earthquake in terms of people in need, in terms of the budgets needed to provide assistance. And I have to say the impact on people has also been quite harsh. Very simple things like dropping your child off at school in the morning, going to church, or going to the supermarket. These things are not risk-free in Port-au-Prince, and people are stressed out. I have colleagues who've seen people get pulled out of their cars and kidnapped on their commutes to the office, and that just shows how risky things are in Port-au-Prince right now. So I think that's part of the reality. But what I've also seen is a team here that's really able to rally around the objective of providing assistance to their fellow Haitians. I have to say that what really struck me was earlier on in my stay here in Haiti, we had one of our offices was attacked. It wasn't just attacked; it was vandalized, looted, and burned to the ground. This was in the town of Gonaïves in September 2022. And I remember going to Gonaïves a few days later to talk to the team. The first thing they told me was, Jean-Martin, we want to get back to work. And again, the office was burned down. It was a pile of ruins. There was glass everywhere. Our vehicles had been destroyed. But we got back to work, and we made sure that our commitment to the communities in that part of Haiti was intact. So we resumed our distributions, we resumed our support to smallholder farmers, we resumed the activities we had in that area. And I think that really shows how this team keeps going, even though we were targeted by an attack. And a big part of doing humanitarian work in Haiti and maybe even other places, it's also your ability to take your licks and keep going. And I have to say that it's really admirable what the team here is able to do, even though we're under such a duress.
Yeah, sadly, this issue of humanitarian aid workers being faced with real directed security threats is not unique to Haiti anymore. It's becoming more and more common in many places. John Martin, you're talking about the security situation. So just quickly, I'm curious, what is the latest in terms of the Kenyan soldiers that are supposed to be there? I know an advance team came. Are you seeing a change in the security situation based on that? Are you coordinating with some of these new security forces?
Well, what we're seeing right now is there's been a political process over the past few weeks that I think has led to a calmer situation in Port-au-Prince. Of course, there's still a very tense security situation in the city, but at least the roadblocks are gone. At least the kids are going to school in some parts of the city, and that's really a positive. A new government was sworn in yesterday, and again, that's a signal that there's a political process that's taking place, and again, a good signal. In terms of the deployment of the MSS, and that's the acronym we use for this security support mission that's expected in Haiti. We don't have details on how it would deploy, but of course, for us, the priority is to continue having access to the population. Right now, we've been able to continue operating inside Port-au-Prince. Just a few weeks ago, we were able to reach 93,000 people in Cité Soleil, one of the most vulnerable parts of Port-au-Prince, with food rations. We provided more than 600 tons of food to the people of Cité Soleil. We're continuing our interventions in these areas. And what we want to make sure is that we continue having access in the context of the deployment of a force. What I try to explain to people is that the crisis in Haiti is multi-layered. First of all, it didn't start yesterday. It didn't start in March when there were these attacks in Port-au-Prince. It didn't start when the president was murdered 2 years ago. And it didn't start with the earthquake of 2010. We're really dealing with a problem that began long ago. And we need to have an approach that's long-term, that it addresses the root causes of hunger in this country. That's why we operate, especially outside of Port-au-Prince, in very close collaboration with local farmer groups. We purchase as much food as we can from local farmers in order to give them a chance to stay operational in this crisis and continue building the food systems here in Haiti. So you've got a multi-layered, a longer-term crisis in this country. So of course, security is an important foundational issue, and the MSS is meant to tackle that. But what's really important to note is that boots on the ground alone will not solve the problem. And it's also something the new government has been talking about. We need to ensure that there's a robust social component. There needs to be a robust humanitarian response, because right now, half of the population is facing acute food insecurity in Haiti. 5 million people, according to the government, are either in crisis or emergency food insecurity. We need to know that Haiti will never be at peace as long as half of its population doesn't know where its next meal is coming from. So it's really a multi-pronged issue that requires a strategy that combines security, humanitarian assistance, social assistance, rebuilding the economy. And security is not going to be the magic bullet, the silver bullet here.
Yeah, I appreciate that and the complexity of it. And, you've referred to hunger and nutrition. So I'd love to get into a discussion with you about a couple of stories we published this week. One had this really shocking headline about 1 in 4 young children globally are being deprived of nutritious food, according to UNICEF. The piece basically talks about sort of a way of categorizing food into 8 food groups, and that if kids are really just getting 2 of those, like very commonly milk or breast milk, plus one other, maybe a starch, that they can be really severely malnourished because they're missing out on a lot of micronutrients that are so essential, especially when you're under 5. And the story kind of interestingly also points to the fact that in some cases it's about these young kids getting healthy foods replaced by unhealthy ultra-processed foods that are now available in the marketplace in so many even very low-income countries. And I wonder, if you saw that story, if you saw that report from UNICEF, and if it kind of resonates with what you've seen on the ground in Haiti, and obviously you've worked for WFP and for the UN for a couple of decades, Jean Martin, in many places around the world, including the Sahel. what do you think of that story? Does it jive with sort of how you see the evolving challenge around malnutrition?
Well, malnutrition is an issue that's probably more complex than you'd immediately assume. And I think what this piece shows is that it's really about the quality of the foods that you have, and it's not just about lack of calories. It's much more complex. It is the food groups. It is also the ultra processed foods that are being introduced at a young age. Here in Haiti, one of the things we're looking at is the types of food that school children have access to, and we did a recent look at the way school children spend the money that their parents give them for quite often for water at school. Kids have to walk from their homes to school, and there's no clean water at school. So quite often the parents will give them a bit of money to buy water, but that money is often spent on candy or on highly processed foods. And so even in countries with poverty and a low resource base, you will find children being introduced to ultra processed foods at a young age. And the challenge to us in the aid community is to see how can we help local companies, Haitian companies, produce snacks for young children, in this case for school children that provide nutrition, that provide taste, that provide sort of a good experience, and also that's cheap. And it's not obvious at all about exactly how you do that. So we're trying to find a way of helping shape the food system in a way that's more beneficial to nutritious outcomes for nutrition outcomes for children. I mean, there's deprivation so you might be a child in Port-au-Prince with a very low intake in terms of calories, and you might be facing a higher nutrition risk because of the conflict in Port-au-Prince. But just a few miles away, you might have an issue around overconsumption, because that's how the food system in Haiti is shaped. And I'd say and this isn't just about imported versus local. It's also about local companies packing a lot of sugar and into sugary drinks that are available for young children at places like stalls near schools. So we need to look at how our interventions are shaped, and we would love to be able to work with local companies in Haiti to develop fruit juices for school children, or other snacks that are again packed with vitamins, minerals, that are cheap but that are also very tasty. So I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I think that piece definitely shows that the challenge of nutrition is still here and that it looks different.
Yeah, I remember being in Mali maybe 20 years ago, in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and it's sort of become a cliche, right? That of course there in the middle of nowhere there was a vendor in a little cart selling Coca-Cola and selling, candy and gum, and you could get that stuff everywhere, right? And of course, all over the global South, that has been the reality for a long time. But it does feel like something has shifted in the intervening years, that the food industry, both local and international, has changed, and the accessibility of a whole range of ultra processed foods has just really gone up. And so now you're seeing it here in the data around, what it means for young kids and their access to healthy foods. Does that ring true for you, Jean-Martin? Do you feel like there has been a real shift?
No, absolutely. If I go back 20 years, I remember that biscuits were a luxury in Niger. This is where I started my career at WFP. People would give them as gifts. If you hadn't seen someone in a few days, or someone would come back from a trip, they'd bring you a box of cookies. And now these biscuits are commonplace, and diets are, the availability of these things has just become ubiquitous. And here in Haiti, definitely you've got sugary drinks all over the place, and that has consequences on health and nutrition. So the challenge has definitely shifted. It's really about the availability of the foods, the quality of the foods that are there on the market.
Hi, I'm Kate Warren, Executive Editor at DevEx. If you are listening to this podcast, you are likely working to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. But are you subscribed to DevEx Newswire? Global development can be a fast-moving, complex sector. Our team of global reporters work every day to bring you the news you need to make sense of it all. In DevEx Newswire, we keep you up to date on issues ranging from climate change financing to gender equality and global health to transforming the food system, all in a fun-to-read, free newsletter delivered directly to you 5 days a week. Join the hundreds of thousands of global development professionals who receive DevEx Newswire and visit devex.com/newsletters to sign up to this free newsletter today.
Alyssa, we had a couple other stories this week, and maybe you want to comment on this one, but I also love to hear, maybe you could tell people about some of the other pieces that we had on the same theme. We had a story about using gene editing technology to address exactly these kinds of issues around nutrition.
I thought that was a good one. That's fascinating, and absolutely, the foods we eat in the future are going to be quite different from the ones we ate in the past. So the piece was about using CRISPR gene editing tech to make foods more nutritious, maybe resistant to climate change, droughts, extra or salination, what have you. And there's definitely a lot of potential there. I suppose the question that I have when I see something like that, there's definitely a lot of potential, and I'm sure that the farmers of the U.S. would be able to pick something like that up and make it into a tool that they'd use to be more resilient and increase their production. I'm just looking at the story from the Haitian perspective. I'm always worried about how, to what extent these new technologies are accessible for farmers in a place like Haiti, where people tend to either keep their own seeds or buy them quite locally, where the market for seeds looks quite different. And I'm wondering if this is I'd say another instance of a technology that might not totally be suited to the context we're in. I mean, I would love for something like this to be plug and play in an environment like Haiti, but I suspect that it might not be that straightforward. And we had issues in Haiti with the Green Revolution and the technological package that came with it, including improved seeds. And Haiti just has never been able to produce more rice, which is its key staple food. Because it's been buried by imports since the 1990s, and there were important policy decisions made that made Haitian farming less productive. So I think, as long as we're in this environment where Haitian farmers are facing a very a tide of low cost imports, and in some cases conflict, the Artibonite, which is the breadbasket of Haiti, has been the theater of fighting between armed groups, and more than 3,000 hectares of land are no longer cropped in Artibonite. So when I hear something about like CRISPR, I'm excited about the potential, but then I wonder how adaptable it would be to a context like this one.
Yeah, I just feel like, with all of these stories and with this conversation, I'm reminded of the cyclical nature of all of this, in terms of if we don't get this right, if malnutrition in places like Haiti, but also places like Sudan, Gaza, et cetera, continue, this just feeds into further conflict and further issues, right? And so there's a lot at stake here. And I think I was just curious to hear Jean-Martin talk about that a little bit in terms of what happens if we don't get this right, and what are the long-term impacts of malnutrition on children?
Well, I want to start at the individual level. Malnutrition the impact of malnutrition on children is terrible. I mean, you don't reach your potential. I mean, the children affected by the malnutrition in Haiti will not get the same IQ, earn the same degrees, have the same earning potential later in life, and this is a tragedy for them, for their families. But I'm worried about the impact on society writ large. Haiti's been a country facing mass hunger for years now. It's according to the numbers we have from the government, it's been above 4 million Haitians have been facing acute hunger since COVID, since 2020, and we're now in 24. So it's been 4 years of very high levels of hunger, and they've been increasing every year since Hurricane Matthew in 2016. It started with there was actually no acute hunger in 2016 in this country. It started with Hurricane Matthew and it's just increased ever since. And I'm terrified about the impact that such high levels of hunger have on the social fabric in this country. The hunger is probably a cause and a consequence of the problems that Haiti's facing right now. and probably not well understood. If you look at what this all means, it's probably related to the impacts that Haitian. Well, first of all, I talked about the social fabric in Haiti, but it's probably also linked to the migration out of Haiti. If you're in a country where farmers aren't able to make a decent living, where food costs can be very expensive. If you're here in Port-au-Prince and you face an ever-rising cost for food, I mean, food prices went up by 27% in just 4 months here with the violence we've had recently. You'll understand that one of the basic building blocks of a peaceful society just aren't there. So I'm concerned about what this means also for the individuals, but also for society at large.
We're fast running out of time, and I want to try to get to at least a couple more stories. I mean, this one that we've just been commenting on is, really a fascinating piece that's worth a look from our own Catherine Cheney, all about CRISPR technology and, how it's potentially leading to a revolution in gene editing food for nutrition and for resilience in the countries we talked about, and hopefully to avoid the kind of situation that Jean Martin just described, the awful case of what malnutrition can do. We have a couple of other fascinating ones. One I'd love your take on, Jean Martin, is the story entitled "The Rise of the Global South Expat and Why It's Bad for Localization." I mean, you've been in this space for so many years, so you've worked as an expat, you've been around other expats, you've kind of seen these trends, and the story is essentially saying our image of an expat, an American or a European who has been sent to somewhere in the global south, that's actually kind of a minority case now, and it's more common to have expats who are themselves from the global south and have been sent to maybe a neighboring country, where they get to earn an expat package, higher pay, maybe housing, maybe schooling for their kids, maybe better insurance, and that this is potentially a real challenge when it comes to this whole theme of localization. Did you get a chance to see that story, Jean Martin, and what's your take on it?
Look, the way the aid community operates has completely changed, and definitely when I got started at WFP, there were and I started in West Africa. You did have a lot of people from Europe in the offices, and the Global South expat. Just underscores how things have shifted. I would say for localization, we need to have we need to be really clear about what that means. And in the case of WFP Haiti, we have about 20% expats in the country. But to us, it's really about the delivery of our programs. We want to make sure that our distributions are mostly managed by local NGOs that we hand over to local partners. I mentioned the 170 farmer organizations we work with that work with local foods. And so it's granted we have more expats from the region. Probably a good thing, but the localization agenda, I see it as much broader than the composition of the workforce. But I think you've identified in that piece an interesting trend. I mean, does it automatically make us a better partner or more sensitive to local realities? It's not always obvious, but I would really look at how localization works and what the benchmarks for that would be. I think it's still a big word that we haven't yet, a big concept we haven't quite nailed down.
And I think this is something people have been struggling with for quite a long time, whether the piece mentions rising local NGO salaries to meet international markets and then therefore draining local talent pools, right? So there's this issue of, okay, you could make salaries larger and make salaries higher so that locals will stay instead of going to another country. But then you're kind of influencing the public sector salaries and you're influencing everything else that's going on in that country. So it seems like a tough nut to crack in terms of how to fund these types of roles and what kind of the larger implications are.
Well, look, one thing I'd like to add about that is here in Haiti, we've had a lot of turnover in the past 2 years, and that's been because of the situation in the country. A lot of people are trying to leave Haiti, and that, I think that does lead to issues. A lot of government staff, people in the police, people in the central bank. I mean, the essential institutions of the country are suffering from turnover. The UN is suffering from turnover. And how do you keep an aid effort afloat? Well, one of the rationales could be, well, you increase salaries, but that's not enough to to keep people here. So it might be an additional distortion in workplaces or environments that are quite complicated.
Yeah, the whole thing is a complex picture. You can imagine some international NGOs, I think if they have a leader, like a country director or project director who's from the country, it also means that they're maybe more susceptible to political pressure in that country. Their family is there, they might have political connections, and you might lose a sense of the neutrality that an international organization, can bring. And so you see quite a lot of these organizations maybe bring in that expat from the neighboring country because they have the cultural and language similarities that provide a big advantage versus someone from the US or the UK or Europe, but yet they're not from that country, and it is an advantage in a sense. And then they can pay these international packages. So it's a complex dynamic, no doubt. One other story, maybe Alyssa, quickly, we can just mention to listeners, because it's a fascinating one from our colleague Rebecca Root about this water conference in Indonesia. Could you give people a sense of what kind of chaos unfolded there?
Absolutely. I mean, this was a wild story. I think when, we've all been to conferences and we've all been to events in this space, typically they go on without a hitch. But in Bali, there was basically this issue of two competing conferences that typically can, run smoothly. There's the World Water Forum, and then there's the People's Water Forum. And these kind of two competing conferences for years have been able to, kind of work smoothly together. This year, though, was very different. There was a situation where the People's Water Forum, which actually shut down by pro-government paramilitary groups, and folks think that this was kind of part of a continued crackdown on a freedom of expression and potentially because of the forum's anti-water privatization stance. So you had a situation where there was a conference going on, as we would all go to in international development. And there was kind of this group that was barricading guests in their hotel for 3 days, intimidating them, threatening them. There were reports of men storming the event and removing posters and shoving attendees. So really kind of changed the nature of what you would typically expect at a conference. And I think, part of it, a lot of, the individuals that Rebecca spoke with said, this is keeping in line with Indonesia's kind of broader attacks on civil society. There's worries about freedom of expression. So there's a lot to unpack with that story, and it's certainly worth a read.
Yeah, there's a line in there about the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation, who apparently tried to visit the conference venue and then, in order to help and intervene, and was basically refused entry and then taken off the premises by police. So it's quite a fascinating read. If you haven't had a look at it yet, I would recommend taking a look. We had a couple of other quick stories I'll just mention before we have to go. One by Catherine Davidson, who has visited some of the kind of model development villages that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was responsible for outside of his home district, where he was elected to parliament in Varanasi. And she actually visited 3 of these 8 villages and talked to villagers about some of the underlying economic challenges that they face, which perhaps are a major reason why the Modi government, ended up not winning as big as people thought they would. I mean, he will remain prime minister in a coalition, but it was not the overwhelming victory in the elections just a week or so ago that many people expected. And Catherine sort of gets to some of the development challenges that may have underlied that vote. And then we had a story that was a real scoop that has been picked up by a lot of media, by our own Colin Lynch, that points out that for the first time since the UN was founded, this is the first moment when a sitting US president hasn't hosted a sitting UN Secretary General to the Oval Office. You could have your own view about how important that might be, but the story interviews a number of people who talk about the symbolism behind that, and others who say, this is much ado about nothing, but it really gets into kind of the Biden-Guterres relationship in a fascinating way and what some of the friction points are. And that is very much worth a read if you haven't had a chance. I know we're really basically out of time here, but Jean-Martin, I thought maybe we could just end with you with maybe just a sense for what you are looking for this development and humanitarian community to do or to know, or what you feel like people are maybe not understanding about the situation in Haiti, given that you're right there at the center of this extreme crisis.
No, I appreciate it, Raj. What's important is for people to realize that we're in a very dangerous world right now. We've got multiple crises. You mentioned, there's Gaza, there's Sudan, there's Ukraine. But to American listeners, there's Haiti. We are 90 minutes from Fort Lauderdale. You've got 600,000 people who've been forced to flee their homes. There's rising child malnutrition. We need to do a lot more to get this under control. I think there's a path to getting things done in Haiti. We need to respond to the here and now, but also build that bridge with longer term solutions. This problem will not go away if we deal with it in an ad hoc fashion. I'm hoping that what we would see for Haiti is a multi-year plan, multi-year commitment to get things right here. I appreciate your having me today because I'm this message needs to be repeated. Haiti needs to be on your minds. The eyes of the world need to be on Haiti because what's going on here is just dramatic.
Well, we really appreciate you, Jean-Martin, taking the time to be a part of this today. Thank you, Alyssa Milene, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. This has been another episode of This Week in Global Development. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the DevEx Newswire, and you'll get all this news, including on what's going on in Haiti going forward. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
This has been This Week in Global Development. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe using the link in the description. To get even more coverage and analysis on the most pressing development issues of the day, become a DevEx Pro member by going to devex.com/membership and signing up. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.